If I'm hoping to do well in my first ever Strathpuffer 24-hour race, then I'm going to need to enlist the help of a few experts along the way. Well, experts don't come much more highly qualified than Steve Day, who with the help of Exposure Lights won 3 WEMBO World Solo 24-hour mountain bike championships in the single speed category. He also won 2 24-hour Mountain Mayhem races, so I'm going to sit down with Steve for a chat about the secrets to his success. Tell us a bit about your career on two wheels, how you got into racing and kind of why 24-hour racing was such a big thing for you.
Yeah, so I've never been without a bike basically ever since as long as I can remember. And then did BMX racing for a good few years as a teenager, alongside doing motocross. But when I got to uni, it's kind of when mountain biking was kicking off and kind of the muddy side with big wheels kind of really took off at that point. But I was never really anyone who was at the front end, but just had good endurance. And when Mountain Mayhem first kicked off, the very first one at Trenton Gardens, did that as a team with a bunch of guys from work. And what's that, 25 years ago now? And did that for years and years. But after about 10 years, the group of guys that I was riding with, we started going in different directions. They were quite happy just to plod around. I was the person in the team to let's go for another lap. And eventually ended up doing one on my own. And never looked back. It was one of those things that I found it very, very addictive, a little bit sadistic in terms of when you're doing it, it hurts. But literally, as soon as I finished, it's like, right, when can I sign up for the next one? And I did that for a good few years. And it was after a 12-hour race, talking your sleep down south. Speaking to a friend of mine in the bar over a couple of beers, and he said about this WEMBO thing that was happening up in Scotland. And it was only a few weeks after that race. It's like, there's no way I was going to be ready for it. And when he mentioned California was in 2015, like the following year, it's like, no, there's a target. That was then the really slippery slope in terms of how intense it got for me over a few years to get those 3 titles. So I wasn't successful in California, but then the following year in New Zealand, then Italy, and then Scotland. It was, a good run of kind of 4 or 5 years worth of riding.
Nice.
But yeah, that's kind of my background on bikes.
And as if 24-hour racing isn't hard enough, you choose to do it on a single speed. I mean, why?
I broke my thumb playing hockey, and I couldn't use a shifter. So that's how I got into single speeds. But once I was there, from a 24-hour point of view, it's like, why do anything different? There's nothing to go wrong with your bike. I was riding rigid as well for a long time. So it was like, there's nothing to think about, nothing to worry about other than the riding and nutrition and everything else. And to be honest, it's not really that much slower. You can't hammer it on the descents and on the flat. You can hammer it on the descents just by going fast, but you kind of recover then for the next climb. And what you find is like the single speed guys are normally the guys that pass the geared guys on the climbs. So it's horses for courses, really.
Yeah,
Doesn't really make much difference overall.
fair play. And I get the simplicity side of things as well. That makes a lot of sense. What's kind of driven you to the success you've had, do you think?
So after that session in the beer tent, the first thing I did was go out and find a good coach. And that was through recommendation through Mule Bar, who was supporting me at the time. Basically, John Fern, I've been working with him ever since 2014. He was my coach originally. He's just a good friend now. But that was a really good focal point for me. It gave me the incentive to keep plugging away at the training all through the winter when the conditions were foul, or it's like those times we really don't want to go out on a bike. The fact that I was paying money to John to go as my coach, my mentality is, I'm paying some money for, I'm going to get my money's worth. I definitely got my money's worth. But John was quite good. It wasn't just kind of the physical side of it. It was also some of the mental preparation as well, which was equally as important as the physical stuff. So I'm a very determined person at the end of the day. Once I've set myself a goal, I'll tend to keep going until I achieve it. And then once that first one was achieved, it's like, okay, right, when's the next one?
Right.
But they're not all easy. Italy, for me, the middle one, was hellish, absolutely hellish. But New Zealand and Scotland couldn't have asked for better races. Yeah, just the way it goes.
You touched upon the mental side of things there, which is really interesting because obviously, again, for me, first time doing this, I don't quite know how I'm going to cope. How do you prepare for a 24-hour race mentally as well as the physical side of things?
So as I said about the training, you just got to ride whatever the conditions, whether it's hot, cold, raining, snow, it doesn't matter. You get out, you make yourself uncomfortable. Certainly I do a lot of my riding first thing in the morning. So majority of my riding's on my own. Majority of my riding through the winter would be in the cold and the damp and the dark. When you get used to doing that, then doing a 24-hour race, you're used to the discomfort anyway. That's about as much mental preparation you can do. But the other thing that's really important is knowing what your target is, what your goal is for the event. So take WEMBO in Scotland, for example. I had a DVT early in that year, so I couldn't retrain as hard. And I went into that event thinking, right, top 10 would be great. And if I can get the single speed win off the back of that, awesome. So knowing that in the back of my mind, it's like I knew I had my target. I knew kind of my health hadn't been too good at the start of the year. Very clear expectations. And the guys that were supporting me, my wife and my brother, we were at that one as well. And it was very clear to them, it's like, I'm riding my own race. I'm not getting dragged along. They kept me kind of on track in terms of what my goal was. And it was only in the last kind of 3 or 4 hours that they started turning the heat up because they knew how close it was to the guy that was in second, single speed. But I didn't know where I was overall. They kept that one completely quiet. Yeah. Okay. Focus, determination, and having a very, very clear understanding of what you want to achieve.
Is there a single thing or a group of things, whether that's, support team, equipment, anything like that you would consider to be absolutely vital for 24-hour racing?
Yeah. So your riding kit, your shorts, gloves, shoes, just make sure you're comfortable in it. And then don't try anything new for the race, basically. Use what you've been using for weeks or months before the event. Because the last thing you want is to get uncomfortable. If you've got more than one bike, certainly from my point of view, before Scotland, both my bikes, I basically went over them with a fine-tooth comb and a tape measure to make sure they were identical in setup, so there was no difference between them. So that if I needed to swap, it wasn't going to be the little niggly things that kind of get on top of you, then start kind of eating away in your mind to make you want to give up. It's like take all of those out of the equation. Know your bike inside out. So inevitably stuff doesn't go quite right. Knowing how to fix it on the fly, being comfortable knowing how to fix it on the fly is really important. But likewise, when it comes to things like your pit area, mine was like, just keep it really simple. You see some people with like loads of food and different things to choose from on the bench, just like, box of bars, box of gels, and whatever you put in your water. And not make it too complicated. Just keep it really simple. The more you've got to think about, when you get tired, you get confused, and then you forget to drink or you forget to eat. So keep letting your crew know exactly what you want. And maybe, for me, I always used to have a cup of coffee in the middle of the night. So I'd come in and I'd give them a lapse notice, whether that was for coffee or whether it's for something hot to eat. But again, it would be my choice for something hot to eat would be very, very simple. It'd either be porridge or a rice pudding or something like that, something very simple. Something you can just throw in that you haven't got to contemplate spending too much time putting down your neck. And then your toolkit and your spares, just know exactly where stuff is. Things like brake pads, chain lube, that kind of stuff should be at the top of the box. Yeah. But again, don't overcomplicate it. Just everywhere I go cycling, my red box stuff comes with me. So I just know exactly what's there. Whether that's for 24-hour race or whether it's just for fun, it's always there. I always know what I've got. Those are kind of the key things really. And like I say, running a single speed for me was just a way of taking the complexity out.
what's really, I think, a really important takeout for me there is the familiarity aspect, like you just said, knowing what you've got, where it is, when you need it, and also being so familiar with the bike and stuff like that. 'Cause I think very easy to kind of just go to an event like that and fuel, read up on things you need to fuel on, and then actually it's totally not what you've been eating. And yeah,
Yeah, yeah. So that's it. All the way through my training, I would only ever use the same stuff in my water bottle and use the same bars and gels, which might sound really boring, but it's again one of those things. When you're riding for 24 hours, it does weird stuff to your body. Um, so I always found keeping the stuff really simple. So I used to stick to Talk Energy bars, Talk gels, and then kind of more recently the Precision hydration gels. And I only ever used to have electrolyte in my water. So the Precision hydration stuff for me is something I found worked, and it stopped me getting some body cramps, but it also kept my stomach in good condition.
right.
Because I used to find early on in my 24-hour solo stuff is that I get into the second half of the race and I just got to the point where I couldn't eat and drink. Either I felt bloated or I felt sick. And it was only through quite a long conversation with the guys at Precision Hydration that I kind of realised the error of my ways in terms of what I was trying to eat and drink at the time. Made a very subtle shift, and then all of a sudden, kind of those difficulties disappeared. But it takes time to kind of work that out. And obviously, your first one, you're not going to know for certain. Obviously, you might have done an ultra marathon before, and you just need to make sure that those same things are going to work for you on the bike.
Just a couple more questions, if I may. First one is kind of, I suppose you've touched on, obviously you employed a coach. In terms of the physical training, how important is it to be going out and spending, hours and hours in the saddle? I mean, do you need to be riding up to almost 24 hours to do one of these things, or is it kind of a bit more targeted?
Certainly, my training was a little bit more targeted than that. Most of my riding was kind of at its peak, 2 to 3 hours at a time. But I was maybe riding 4 or 5 times a week, and within that there'd be some longer rides. And the maximum I'd do locally would be about 6 hours. When it was really intense, it was like a 6 hour on a Saturday and a 6 hour on a Sunday. But then the rest of the week might be quite short. But the way that the training plan was set up is it would like grow up over a 4-week period, then back off, and then ramp up over the next 4 weeks. To the point where kind of at its peak, you may be riding, for me, it was between around 20 hours a week. Some weeks a bit less, some weeks a bit more. And then like a nice break just before the event, so your body's fresh, ready to go. And it's again, that gap before the event, that week or 2 weeks off, it just gives you that time to get some good sleep, and kind of prepare yourself mentally and not have to worry about going out and hammering the bike still. And I always found that gap, by the time I got to a race, I was absolutely gagging to go. Couldn't wait to get on the bike. So yeah, it mentally it was great. It was a great method of getting ready for racing.
Okay, I like that. I like that. So then you've done all the preparation. You've done an event like this, which takes so much out of you. How are you kind of dealing with the, I don't want to say aftermath, that's probably a bit of a over dramatization, but how are you kind of coming down on the other side of an event like that, physically and again mentally? How do you deal with that?
Before answering that, the other thing that tends to happen is, certainly for me, and everyone will have a different situation with this. For me, during the race, when you get to daybreak, was the worst bit for me. I absolutely loved riding in the dark. But what I used to find was that at daybreak, what you might still have 6 or 8 hours to go of the race. And it's like sudden realization, it's like, damn, I still got like a third of this thing to go. And that for me was, I had to work very hard to stay focused on staying on the bike and keeping going. So my wife and my brother at my last race knew that was like my sensitive time. So keeping that, making sure I was going back out and not coming into the pits and then trying to find a reason not to ride was really important. So that's very difficult in the races, like knowing when that's going to happen. And after there's so many that I did, I always knew it's always going to be at the same time. Whereas other people, because maybe they don't like riding in the dark, so that's their trigger point. And yeah, different people at different times. In terms of the post-event stuff, you're going to eat a lot, and you're going to sleep a lot. I never really struggled with that because it wasn't something that ever bothered me. That there was like a real buzz. Um, the only thing that happened to me after one of the years was just feeling a little bit lost. I think it was the first one, my New Zealand race that I won. I was on a massive high for weeks. I'd had the race one week, and then I went on a press launch for work the following week, and it's like I had this kind of really exciting things happening, really successful things happening. And I got home after the press launch, it's like, all right, what now?
Yeah.
And I was lost for a long time. And again, it's the benefit of having a coach is like he could see that, and it was like just take some time off, go out, enjoy riding your bike for the sake of riding your bike, and not feeling like you were training for something. And it took a while. And for me, what made the difference was bumping into someone at Cannock. I was just out there on my own, riding around on a Sunday morning. Some guy flagged me down and goes, "Oh, you're Steve Day." It's like, oh, yeah. It's like, amazing race. It's like, all of a sudden, it kind of put my life back in perspective. It's like, I said, it was worth something. I did achieve something. But yeah, for me, normally it's not been a problem. After having been through that once, it then didn't happen again afterwards. Yeah, but that's just me. It's I guess it affects a lot of different people in a lot of different ways.
Yeah. Steve, honestly, so grateful for your time and your knowledge, your sort of inside secrets, if you like. I don't think I'm going to be quite getting to your level, but if I can do myself justice come Strathpuffer, I'll be delighted, and I'll take all of that advice on board. So thank you very much.
I'll be watching to see how you get on.
Please don't.